The Apache girl admitted, "I've been alone for 2 years," and the rancher said, "Then let me end that." The rancher woke up every morning before the sun. The land around him was quiet at that hour, covered in soft mist and the sound of distant birds. This ranch had been his whole world for many years. It was not a small place. Wide open fields stretched as far as the eye could see, fenced carefully with wood and wire he had repaired with his own hands many times. The house was old but strong, built by his father and grandfather before him. Every corner of the place carried memories, yet most days those memories stayed silent, just like the house itself. He lived alone. Not because he wanted to, but because life had slowly pushed him into that shape. Years ago, he had dreams of building a family, of laughter filling the house in the evenings. But things had not worked out the way he hoped. People came and went. Promises were made and later broken. Over time, he learned not to expect much from anyone. Work was easier than feelings. Animals were simpler than people. The land never lied to him. If he cared for it, it gave back. That was enough, or at least that was what he told himself. His days were full of routine. Feeding the cattle, checking the fences, fixing broken boards, and riding across the land to make sure everything was in order. By the time the sun climbed high, his shirt would be dusty, his hands rough, and his thoughts tired. He rarely went into town unless he needed supplies. The town was small and people knew him well, but they also knew he kept to himself. They respected him for his honesty and hard work, but few truly knew him beyond that. One afternoon, while repairing a fence near the far edge of his land, he noticed something unusual. Someone was standing a short distance away, near the dirt path that ran past his ranch. At first he thought it might be a traveler passing through, but then he saw her more clearly. She was young, with long dark hair tied back loosely, and she stood still, as if she did not want to draw attention to herself. Her clothes were simple and her posture showed both strength and caution. He paused his work and watched her for a moment. People did not usually stop there. That part of the ranch was quiet, far from the house and barns. He wondered if she was lost or if she needed something. After a few seconds, he decided not to shout. Instead, he slowly walked toward her, making sure not to startle her. When he was close enough, he greeted her politely. His voice was calm, the same voice he used with nervous animals. She looked at him carefully before answering. Her eyes were alert, but there was no fear in them, only awareness. She told him she was just passing through and did not mean any trouble. Her words were gentle and her tone carried respect. He nodded and told her it was fine. He explained that this was private land, but he did not sound angry or strict. He simply wanted to understand why she was there. She said she lived nearby and sometimes walked this path to clear her mind. She mentioned she was Apache, and she said it plainly, without pride or apology, as if it was simply a fact of who she was. Their conversation was short, but something about it stayed with him. She thanked him for his understanding and began to walk away. Before she left, she turned back and gave him a small nod, almost like a sign of mutual respect. Then she was gone, leaving behind the quiet land and a strange feeling in his chest. He returned to his fence, but his focus was gone. His hands continued to work, but his mind replayed the moment. He could not explain why meeting her felt different from any other brief encounter he had had in years. There was nothing dramatic about it. No deep conversation, no strong emotions spoken aloud. Yet something had shifted, like the land itself had noticed her presence. That evening, as he sat alone on his porch watching the sky turn orange and purple, he thought about her again. He wondered where she lived and what her life was like. He did not allow himself to imagine too much. He had learned that expectations often led to disappointment. Still, her calm voice and steady eyes returned to his thoughts again and again. The next day passed like any other, but he found himself glancing toward the path more often than usual. He told himself it was nothing, just curiosity. Yet when he saw her again 2 days later, walking the same path, he felt a quiet relief he had not expected. This time she stopped first. She greeted him by name, which surprised him. He realized she must have asked someone in town. They spoke a little longer than before. She shared that she worked part-time at a local market and helped elders in her community when she could. She did not speak much about herself, but when she did, her words were honest and simple. He listened more than he spoke. Listening had always been easier for him. He learned that she valued silence as much as conversation. There were moments when neither of them spoke, yet the quiet felt comfortable, not awkward. That was rare for him. As days turned into weeks, these small meetings became part of his routine. They never planned them, but somehow they kept happening. Sometimes they talked for only a few minutes. Other times, they sat on a fallen log and watched the land stretch endlessly before them. He never pushed for more, and she never pulled away. There was a balance between them that felt natural. Still, deep inside, both carried their own histories. The rancher had learned to build walls around his heart, walls made of routine and responsibility. The Apache woman had learned to stand on her own, to rely on herself above all else. Neither of them spoke of pain, but it existed quietly, shaping the way they moved through the world. One afternoon, as the wind moved gently through the grass, he noticed something different in her expression. She seemed tired, not physically, but in a deeper way. He did not ask questions. Instead, he offered her water and a place to sit. Small gestures mattered to him more than words. As the sun lowered, they talked about the land, about how the seasons changed and how life moved in cycles whether people noticed or not. She said she liked the ranch because it felt honest. He understood what she meant. There was no pretending there. Things lived or they didn't. They grew or they faded. It was simple, but it was real. When she left that day, the rancher remained seated for a long time. He realized something important then. For the first time in years, he was not counting the hours until sleep. He was present, fully present, and that realization unsettled him as much as it comforted him. He knew this was only the beginning of something, though he did not know what. He did not name it or define it. He only knew that the quiet life he had built around himself had shifted slightly, just enough to let something new breathe within it. The meetings between the rancher and the Apache girl slowly became something neither of them questioned. They did not call them meetings, and they never fixed a time. They simply happened, like the sunrise or the changing wind. Some days they spoke only a few words. Other days they shared longer moments, standing or sitting near the path that crossed the edge of the ranch. There was comfort in knowing neither of them expected anything more than honesty. The rancher noticed small details about her. He noticed how she always paused before speaking, choosing her words carefully. He noticed how she listened with full attention, never interrupting. When she smiled, it was gentle, not loud or showy. She carried herself with quiet strength, the kind built from learning how to stand alone for a long time. He respected that without fully understanding it yet. She, too, noticed things about him. She saw how he treated the land with care, never rushing his work. She saw how animals trusted him, how they stayed calm around him. She noticed that he never spoke badly about anyone, even when others did. There was steadiness in him, something rare in her experience. Still, she remained careful. Life had taught her that even good people could disappear. One evening, clouds gathered suddenly, and the sky darkened earlier than expected. The wind picked up, and the air grew cool. She was passing by when the rancher noticed the weather changing. He suggested she take shelter in the barn until the rain passed. She hesitated for a moment, then agreed. The barn was large and clean, filled with the smell of hay and wood. Rain began to fall hard against the roof, loud but steady. They stood there, listening to the sound. For a while, neither spoke. The moment felt heavy but not uncomfortable. Finally, she broke the silence. She said she liked the sound of rain because it reminded her that things could wash clean, even if only for a short time. He nodded, understanding more than he could explain. That was the first time she spoke about herself in a deeper way. She did not give details, but she shared enough to let him see behind the calm surface. She spoke about moving from place to place, about learning to depend on herself. She spoke about how silence had become her closest companion. Her voice remained steady, but the meaning behind her words was clear. The rancher listened closely. He did not interrupt or offer advice. He simply let her speak. When she finished, she looked at him as if expecting judgment or pity. Instead, she saw neither. She saw respect. That surprised her more than anything else. Later that evening, after the rain stopped, they walked out together. The land looked different, fresh and clean. She thanked him for the shelter and started to leave. Before she did, she turned back and said she appreciated that he listened. It was a simple statement, but it stayed with him long after she walked away. From that day on, their conversations grew more open. Not all at once, but slowly, piece by piece. One afternoon, as they sat watching the cattle move calmly across the field, she spoke words that carried more weight than anything she had said before. She said, quietly and without drama, that she had been alone for 2 years. The words hung in the air between them. She did not say them to gain sympathy. She did not say them with sadness. She said them as a fact, like stating the weather. Yet the rancher felt the meaning deeply. He understood loneliness, but hearing it spoken so plainly made it feel heavier. She explained that being alone did not always mean being unhappy. Sometimes it meant learning how to survive. Sometimes it meant choosing peace over chaos. But she admitted that there were nights when the silence felt too large, and days when she wished someone would notice if she disappeared. Her voice did not break, but her eyes reflected the truth. The rancher felt a tightness in his chest. He wanted to respond carefully, not to rush into words that might sound empty. He thought about his own life, about the quiet evenings and long days without real connection. He realized that loneliness had shaped him too, even if he rarely admitted it. He told her that being alone for too long could become a habit, one that was hard to break. He said it without blame, speaking as someone who knew that habit well. She looked at him, surprised by his honesty. In that moment, something shifted between them. They were no longer just two people passing time. They were two people recognizing shared truth. After that conversation, things felt different but not uncomfortable. There was more understanding between them. They still respected each other's space, but the distance felt smaller. They shared meals occasionally, simple food eaten slowly. They talked about the past only when it felt right. Neither pushed the other. The rancher found himself looking forward to her presence in a way he had not felt in years. He noticed how the land seemed less empty when she was near. Even when she was not there, the thought of her made the days feel lighter. He reminded himself not to rush. Good things, he knew, took time. She too felt a change. She noticed that she slept better on nights after seeing him. She felt less guarded, less alone with her thoughts. Still, fear remained. She had learned that trusting someone meant risking loss. She moved carefully, watching for signs of danger that never seemed to appear. One late afternoon, as the sky turned soft and gold, she spoke again about her loneliness. She said she had grown used to ending her days without conversation, to carrying her worries alone. She said it was not easy to admit, but she was tired of being strong all the time. The rancher listened, then spoke words that surprised even himself. He told her that no one should have to face life completely alone. He did not promise anything. He did not make grand statements. He simply spoke from a place of honesty. She studied his face, searching for false intentions. She found none. His expression was calm, his words steady. For the first time in a long while, she felt something close to hope, though she did not name it. As the sun set, she stood to leave. Before walking away, she paused and looked back at him. She thanked him for hearing her truth and not turning away. He nodded, feeling the weight of that trust. That night, both lay awake longer than usual. Each thought about the other, about the courage it took to speak honestly after so much time alone. Neither knew where things would lead, but both felt certain of one thing: something real had begun, and it was no longer possible to ignore it. The days after that honest conversation felt slower, as if time itself was paying attention. Nothing dramatic happened right away, yet everything felt different. The rancher noticed it first in small ways. When he woke up before sunrise, the quiet no longer felt heavy. It felt expectant, like something was waiting to grow. When he worked in the fields, his thoughts no longer circled only around chores. They returned again and again to the Apache girl and the courage it took for her to speak her truth so calmly. She, too, felt the change. She went about her daily life as usual, working at the market, helping where she could, walking familiar paths. But inside, something had shifted. Saying out loud that she had been alone for 2 years had opened a door she had kept shut for a long time. She had not planned to say it. The words had simply come, honest and unprotected, and instead of regret, she felt relief. They met again 2 days later near the same spot where they often talked. The wind was soft and the sky was clear. For a while they spoke about simple things: the weather, the work that needed to be done before the season changed. Yet beneath the normal talk, both felt the unspoken weight of their last conversation. Finally, the rancher stopped and looked at her directly. His voice was calm, but there was purpose in it. He told her that he had been thinking about what she said. He admitted that he knew what loneliness felt like, even if his life looked full from the outside. He said he had spent years believing that being alone was safer than being disappointed. She listened carefully, her expression serious but open. She did not interrupt. When he paused, she nodded slightly, encouraging him to continue. That was when he said the words that stayed with both of them. He told her that no one should have to stay alone just because they had learned how. He told her, simply and clearly, that if she allowed it, he would like to be someone who stayed. "Then let me end that," he said, not as a demand but as an offer. The words were not loud. They were not dramatic, but they carried honesty, and honesty can be powerful. She felt them settle deep inside her, touching parts of her she had protected for a long time. Still, fear rose quickly after hope. Life had taught her to be careful, especially when something felt good. She asked him what he meant. Her voice was steady, but her eyes searched his face. She needed clarity, not promises made without thought. He answered carefully. He said he did not mean to rush her or change her life overnight. He said he was not offering to solve her problems or take away her strength. He was offering presence, time, consistency. He said he wanted to walk beside her, not ahead of her and not behind. She remained quiet for a long moment. The land around them was still, as if listening. Finally, she spoke. She told him she was afraid. She said that letting someone close meant risking loss, and she had learned how painful that could be. She said she did not know if she was ready. He accepted her words without pushing back. He told her that fear made sense. He said he was not asking her to decide anything right then. He only wanted her to know that the offer was real and would not disappear just because she needed time. That response surprised her. She had expected pressure or disappointment. Instead, she felt respect. That mattered more than anything else. From that day on, their connection grew in a quiet, steady way. The rancher did not suddenly change how he acted. He did not overwhelm her with attention. He simply stayed consistent. If he said he would be there, he was there. If he listened fully. Small actions slowly built trust. They began spending more time together, sometimes working side by side. She helped him with simple tasks around the ranch, and he never treated her as if she owed him anything. He thanked her. He asked her opinions. He valued her presence. She began to relax around him. Her laughter came more easily. She shared small stories from her past, not the painful ones at first, but moments of joy and learning. He shared his own memories, both good and difficult. Each shared story felt like placing another stone in a foundation. There were moments of doubt. Some days she pulled back, needing space. When that happened, he did not chase her or question her choices. He respected her distance, trusting that if he remained steady, she would return when ready. And she did. One evening they sat outside as the sky darkened. The stars slowly appeared one by one. She spoke softly, telling him that she had not realized how tired she was of being strong until she no longer had to be strong all the time. She admitted that allowing someone to care was harder than surviving alone. He listened and told her that strength did not disappear when shared. He said it often grew. His words were simple, but they carried truth. She felt tears in her eyes but did not turn away. She let him see them. That alone felt like a victory. As weeks passed, the ranch began to feel different to both of them. It was no longer just a place of work or a place to pass through. It became a shared space, filled with quiet conversations and unspoken understanding. The rancher noticed how much he valued her presence. She noticed how safe she felt without feeling controlled. Still, neither ignored reality. They spoke openly about boundaries, about moving slowly, about honoring each other's pasts. There were no illusions of perfection. They understood that real connection required effort and patience. One day, she told him something that mattered deeply. She said that for the first time in 2 years, she no longer felt invisible. She said she felt seen, not because someone needed her, but because someone chose her presence. The rancher felt emotion rise in his chest. He realized that his simple offer had grown into something meaningful for both of them. He told her that her presence had changed his life too. He said the land felt warmer, the days fuller. By the end of that season, both knew they were no longer walking alone. They had not labeled their connection, and they did not need to. What mattered was the truth between them. The offer he had made was no longer just words. It had become action, lived day by day. And in that steady, honest choice to stay, something new had taken root, something built not on rescue or need, but on mutual respect and shared courage. As their bond grew stronger, life did not suddenly become easy. In fact, the deeper their connection became, the more the past began to rise quietly between them. It was not loud or dramatic. It appeared in small moments, in pauses during conversations, in expressions that changed without words. Both of them carried old experiences that had shaped how they trusted, how they reacted, and how they protected themselves. The rancher noticed it when she became quiet for no clear reason. Some days she would be open and warm, talking freely and laughing softly. Other days she would grow distant, her eyes thoughtful, her words short. At first he wondered if he had done something wrong. Old fears surfaced in him too. He had known disappointment before, and part of him feared losing what they were building. Instead of letting those fears control him, he chose patience. He reminded himself that trust did not grow in straight lines. He gave her space when she needed it and welcomed her back without questions when she returned. That consistency was not easy for him. There were moments when his own doubts whispered that it would be safer to step back, but he had already decided that walking away was no longer an option. She struggled in her own way. Letting someone close brought old memories to the surface. Memories of depending on people who did not stay, of giving trust too early and paying for it later. Some nights, she lay awake questioning whether she was making a mistake. She wondered if she was strong enough to face loss again if things did not last. One evening, after a long day, they sat together near the ranch house. The air was cool and the land was quiet. She seemed restless, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The rancher noticed and gently asked if something was bothering her. She hesitated, then shook her head. Old habits told her to stay silent. He did not push, but he did not ignore it either. He told her that she did not have to carry everything alone anymore. He said that even if she could not speak right then, he was there when she was ready. Those words stayed with her. Later that night, she returned and sat beside him again. Her voice was soft but steady as she began to speak. She talked about her past more openly than before. She spoke about moments when she had trusted and been let down, about learning to rely only on herself because it felt safer. She admitted that sometimes happiness felt unfamiliar, even frightening. The rancher listened closely. He did not interrupt or try to fix anything. He understood that some pain did not need solutions. It needed understanding. When she finished, he spoke honestly about his own past. He shared how he had built his life around work because it gave him control. He admitted that he had avoided emotional closeness for years, believing it would protect him. In that shared honesty, something important happened. They saw each other not as strong figures who had everything together, but as people still learning how to heal. That realization brought them closer, even though it also made them vulnerable. There were moments of misunderstanding too. Once, a small disagreement turned into silence that lasted longer than either expected. Both retreated into old habits, she into distance, he into quiet withdrawal. For a brief time, it felt as though they might drift apart, but something had changed between them. Neither wanted to return to loneliness. After a few days, the rancher reached out, not with blame but with openness. He told her that silence scared him, not because he needed control, but because he cared. He admitted that he was still learning how to communicate. She listened and responded with equal honesty. She said silence was how she protected herself when she felt unsure. She said she did not mean to push him away. That conversation did not solve everything, but it created understanding. They learned that facing discomfort together was better than avoiding it. As time passed, they began to face the past side by side instead of alone. She accompanied him into town more often, slowly becoming part of his world. He showed respect for her culture and listened when she spoke about her background, her values, and her sense of identity. He never tried to change her or claim her life as his own. She appreciated that deeply. In return, she encouraged him to open up to others, to reconnect with parts of life he had set aside. She reminded him that strength also meant allowing joy. Slowly, the walls he had built began to soften. There were days when progress felt slow. Healing was not a straight path. Some days felt heavy, filled with reflection and uncertainty. Other days felt light, full of shared laughter and quiet happiness. They learned to accept both as part of the journey. One important moment came when she told him she was afraid of losing herself if she became too connected. He listened carefully and reassured her that he valued who she already was. He said he did not want her to become someone else for him. He wanted to grow alongside her, not over her. That reassurance mattered more than she realized. It allowed her to relax into the connection without fear of losing her independence. She began to trust not only him but also herself. The ranch became a place of shared healing. Morning routines felt warmer. Evenings felt less empty. They found comfort in simple things, shared meals, quiet walks, meaningful conversations that did not need to be long to be deep. By facing their fears instead of hiding from them, they built something real. It was not perfect, but it was honest. They learned that the past could shape them without controlling them. They learned that choosing to stay, even when it was uncomfortable, was a form of courage. As another season approached its end, both understood that what they had built was no longer fragile. It had been tested by fear, silence, and doubt, and it had held. They were not free from pain, but they were no longer alone in carrying it. Together, they stood stronger than either had been on their own, not because their pasts disappeared, but because they finally faced them side by side. The final season arrived quietly, without announcement. The air changed first, becoming cooler in the mornings and softer in the evenings. The land around the ranch showed signs of rest, as if it, too, had learned something from the months that had passed. For the rancher and the Apache woman, this season did not feel like an ending, but a settling, a moment when everything they had been building finally felt steady beneath their feet. Their days had found a gentle rhythm. They woke early, not because they had to, but because the mornings felt meaningful when shared. Sometimes they worked together, sometimes apart, always knowing they would come back to the same place by evening. Silence no longer felt empty. It felt full, shaped by trust and understanding. The rancher noticed how much he had changed. He no longer measured his life only by work completed or tasks finished. He noticed the small things now, the way the light fell across the land at sunset, the sound of her footsteps as she approached, the calm that filled the house at night. He realized that companionship had not taken anything from him. It had given his life a deeper shape. She noticed her own change as well. The constant weight she had carried for years had begun to lift. She still valued her independence, still honored her strength, but she no longer believed she had to face everything alone. Being with him did not make her smaller. It allowed her to rest without fear. One evening, as they sat together outside, she spoke about the word home. She said that for a long time, she believed home was only a place you passed through, never something you stayed in. She said she had learned to leave before being left. Her voice was calm, but the meaning behind her words was deep. The rancher listened and told her that he once believed home was only something you worked for, not something you felt. He said that this land had always been his responsibility, but now it felt like something more. It felt alive in a new way. They did not make big promises. They did not talk about forever in dramatic terms. Instead, they talked about tomorrow and the day after that. They talked about continuing to choose one another even when life felt heavy or uncertain. That choice felt stronger than any spoken vow. As time passed, the people in town noticed the change too. The rancher smiled more. He spoke more openly. The Apache woman no longer walked as if she were passing through someone else's world. She moved with confidence, belonging to herself and to the life she had chosen. There were still challenges. Life did not stop being unpredictable. But when difficulties came, they faced them together. They had learned how to speak honestly, how to listen without defending, how to stay present even when emotions ran deep. One quiet afternoon, she told him something that mattered deeply. She said that being alone for 2 years had taught her survival, but being with him had taught her something different. It had taught her that connection did not mean losing control. It meant sharing responsibility for care, for truth, and for growth. He felt emotion rise in him, not overwhelming, but steady. He told her that her presence had changed his understanding of strength. He said he once believed strength meant standing alone without needing anyone. Now he understood that strength could also mean standing with someone, openly and honestly. They walked the land together often, not because they needed to, but because it felt right. The ranch no longer felt like a place defined by solitude. It felt like a space shaped by shared moments, quiet laughter, and mutual respect. One evening, as the sky turned dark and stars appeared, they stood side by side, not speaking. Words were no longer always necessary. The understanding between them lived in small gestures, a glance, a shared pause, a gentle touch of reassurance. She thought about the day she had first admitted she was alone. She remembered how uncertain she had felt, how carefully she had spoken those words. Now, looking at the life she had built since then, she understood something important. Loneliness had not defined her. It had simply prepared her to recognize connection when it arrived. The rancher reflected on his own journey. He remembered the years he spent believing solitude was his safest option. He realized that safety had never been the same as fulfillment. Opening his life to another person had been a risk, but it had been worth it. They did not see their story as something extraordinary. To them it was simple. 2 people met at the right moment in their lives. Two people chose honesty over fear, patience over pressure, and presence over distance. As seasons continued to change, their bond remained steady. They understood that love, in its truest form, was not about dramatic gestures or constant excitement. It was about showing up, again and again, even when it was quiet, even when it was difficult. The Apache woman no longer counted the years she had spent alone. She no longer measured her life by absence. She measured it by growth, by peace, by the ability to trust without losing herself. The rancher no longer saw the land as something he carried alone. It had become a shared life, shaped by respect and care. The ranch was no longer just a place he worked. It was a home they built together, slowly and honestly. In the end, there was no single moment that marked their happiness. It lived in daily choices, in shared mornings and quiet nights. It lived in the understanding that they were no longer walking separate paths. Their story did not end with grand words or dramatic scenes. It ended instead with something stronger. Two people standing side by side, grounded in truth, choosing each other not because they needed to be saved, but because they had found something real, something lasting, and something worth protecting.